They make a right angle. Good. So there are two lines that they are coplanar, so they have to be on the same plane. They intersect, and they form 90 degrees. They're coplanar, they intersect, they form 90. So we have that written in on today's notes. Then we're going to talk about parallel. What do we know about parallel lines? They're coplanar. And what else?
They never intersect.
And they never intersect. They're coplanar and they never intersect. Then we've got skew. What do we know about skew lines? They have nothing in common, so what does that mean? They're not on the same plane, so they're not coplanar. And then what else do they not do? And they don't intersect. And they don't intersect. So they're not coplanar and they don't intersect. So I'm just going to make the bottom portion of this bigger, like this. So it says, think of each segment in the figure as part of a line. Remember that lines never end. The reason it tells you this is so when you name it like a line. Which lines or planes appear to fit the description? So this one we're going to have a lot of answers because it doesn't say through a specific point like your quiz or test do. So like number 1, it says lines perpendicular to QR. Perpendicular means they intersect and form 90. Here's what I want you to understand. There are 90 degrees on the bottom, but this is a box, correct? It's a rectangular prism. They're not going to put a bunch of right angles because then that would be a lot, because does everyone see how there'd be a lot? There'd be at 3 at each intersection. That would be a lot to draw. So this is a time where normally it'd say in the directions that all of these are right angles. But we are going to assume, because it is a rectangular prism, all of these are right angles. So it says name lines that are perpendicular to QR. Perpendicular means they intersect and form 90. So what are some lines that intersect and form 90 with PQ? RQ. We got QL. QL. What else? MR. What else? NR. And then PQ. So one more.
There's one more?
No, sorry. That was the one more. So those 4 lines. The next one says name lines parallel to QR. So what do we think? ML. And then what's the other one? NP. Why is JK not parallel to QR? It's not coplanar. Not on the same plane. The next one says skew. So we want skew to QR. Skew means it's not on the same plane, and QR is on the bottom plane and on the side plane. So we don't want it on the same plane, and we don't want it to intersect with QR. So what lines are going to be skew? We've got JK, we've got KP, I agree. So we've got JK, KP, what else? JN. He said KL, I agree. I think there might be a couple more. So we said, so hold on. I'm going to re-highlight this. So QR is on the bottom plane and on the side plane. We said JK, we said KP, we said JN, and KL. There's one more. JM. Last one, we want to name a plane or a parallel plane to LMQ, which is the right side of the box. So we want a plane on the left side of the box. So what plane? How do we name a plane first off?
3 points.
We got the word plane, and then we use 3 points. So what are 3 points from this plane?
JKN.
JKN, JKP, PKJ, KPN, anything like that. Go ahead and flip. Sorry, it's on the same page, so then ignore me. We're going to talk about transversals. A transversal is one line that cuts through 2 lines, so this line. It forms relationships. It forms specific relationships that would be congruent or supplementary, but it all rides on the fact that the lines would be parallel, like they show here. So, there are 6 relationships. Let's look at this picture. This is it just in the instructions. It's already solved for you. If you were given a problem like this, is there a relationship between the 50-degree angle and x minus 5? It is in the directions. Is there a relationship? No. One's on the outside, one's on the inside, so they're not alternate interior or exterior. They're not vertical, they share a vertex. They're not a linear pair, none of that. So, here's what I recommend, and I saw a lot of you do on your quiz. I would figure out what all of the angles are that are 50 degrees, and then I'd find out what all of the angles are that are not 50 degrees. How many other angles in this picture are going to be 50 degrees? How many other angles
Are not going to.
are going to be 50 degrees? 3 of them. So the one across from it is vertical. This one will be 50. The one that's corresponding with it will be 50. Yeah, and the one above x minus 5 will be alternate interior, so it'll also be 50. So all of these are 50, 50, 50, 50. So does x minus 5 equal 50? No. So if they're not congruent, that means they're supplementary. So there are 2 options to do this. You can add 50 plus x minus 5, and they'll equal 180. But what's option 2?
Subtract 50 by 180.
Yep. Subtract 50 from 180. And that tells me what all the remaining angles are. That this one is 130, and that this one is 130, and this one's 130. So x minus 5 equals 130, and you still get the same answer, 135. They did it this way, if you look at it. Okay, they add them up, set them equal to 180. We can figure out what x minus 5 does equal and solve from there. So using all the properties we know, we're going to find the values of x and y here. So what do we want to find, x or y first? Sure. What relationship does y have with 35? They're corresponding. What do we know about corresponding angles that sit on 2 parallel lines? They're congruent. So what does y equal? 35. What about x? What relationship do x and 35 have? They are supplementary, but why? They're not consecutive. What are they? They're a linear pair, so they add up to 180. So you just subtract 35 from 180. So x equals 145. Number 6, do we want to find x or y first? It doesn't matter to me. X, sure. What relationship does 5x minus 17 and 48 have?
Alternate interior.
They're alternate interior. What do you know about the measures of alternate interior angles? They equal each other. So that means 5x minus 17 equals 48. So if they equal, we're going to add 17. 5x equals 65. Divide by 5. And x equals 13. 13. To find the value of y, what relationship does y have with 48? consecutive interior. What do you know about consecutive interior angles? They add up to 180. So what is 180 minus 48? 132. Number 7. Which one would we like to solve for first? X or Y? There's no right answer. Sure. Let's solve for Y. What relationship does 2Y and 58 have? They're corresponding, which means they are congruent. So we're going to set them equal. Divide by 2. And Y equals 29. Find 2x. What relationship does 2x and 58 have? They're a linear pair, which means that they are supplementary. So you can add them up. They'll equal 180. Or you can already subtract from 180. What's 180 minus 58? 122. Which realistically, either way you do this, you're going to do this. It's going to be the same thing. Either way, 2x will equal 122. And you'll solve for x. Divide by 2. And x equals 61. The last one, I would take your highlighter. I am recording. I would take your highlighter. And I would just highlight all the ones that are 116. Just makes it a little bit easier to figure out which angles equal. Because the options are they're congruent and you set them equal. Or the option is that they're supplementary. So you've got 116 vertical to that. You've got 116 and 116. So which one of these equals 116? 6x plus 32 equals 116. We could solve for that one. Subtract 32.
84.
Divide by 6.
14.
Alright, so there are a couple of options, but was 5y minus 21 equal to 116? No. But if they're not congruent, the other option is that they are supplementary. So you could add them up. 5y minus 21 plus 116, and they'll equal 180. Or option 2, what will all the remaining angles equal if all of these are 116, 116, 116, 116? How can I find out what all of the blank angles equal?
By subtracting 116 from 180.
180 minus 116 is 64. Or you could just say 5y minus 21 equals 64. Either way is correct. By adding both of them, set them equal to 180. Or finding out what 5y minus 21 equals specifically. Add 21. 5y will equal 85. Divide by 5. Y equals 17. Do we have any questions? Which one are you guys doing?
Oh, the top one.
The top one. What are you doing? The bottom one. Everyone's different. Go ahead and flip to the next page. Proof with parallel lines. So what I want you to do is find a spot in like the bottom of the note somewhere, and you're gonna write properties that prove parallel lines. There are 4 properties that prove parallel lines. What is one of them?
Alternate interior.
What would alternate interior angles have to be? Congruent. So if the alternate interior angles are congruent, like I've drawn, which that's an obtuse angle, so let's make it a little more accurate. If the alternate interior were congruent, that means that's enough information to prove that the 2 lines are parallel. What is another one? Alternate exterior. What would alternate exterior angles have to be? Congruent. So again, if your alternate exterior were marked congruent, that would be enough to prove that A and B are parallel in this picture. There's an angle at A, there's an angle at B. That's why there's enough information. Oop, man. All right, and then what is another one that proves that lines are parallel? Corresponding angles need to be
Congruent.
corresponding need to be congruent. So that's because there's information at both line A and line B. No matter what corresponding angles you pick, there would be information at both lines. And then the last one is consecutive interior. Make sure if you were asked to list this out, you do write interior. What do consecutive interior angles have to be?
Supplementary.
They have to be supplementary. So that means they would have to add up to 180. So, knowing that, we want to find the value of x that makes these lines parallel. So, in number 9, what relationship do these two angles have? Consecutive interior. What measures do consecutive interior angles have to be in order for the lines to be parallel? They have to be supplementary. So, what do I do to find x? Subtract from 180. So, x equals 107. Number 10, what relationship do these two angles have? They're alternate exterior. What do alternate exterior angles have to be in order for the lines to be parallel? Congruent. So x plus 14 has to equal 147. Subtract 14. And x equals 133. This next one is where we do the highlighter trick again. If you take a highlighter, I'm just going to highlight all of the angles that are congruent with 3x. The options are these x's are congruent or they're supplementary. Those are the two options. So I'm just going to highlight all of the angles that would be congruent with 3x. 3x and the angle vertical to it. Then the angle that is corresponding with it. And then vertical to that. So, are these two angles congruent? No. So if they're not congruent, then they are supplementary. So we're going to add them up. 3x.
They don't have a relationship, do they?
Sorry, that is why we had to do this. There's no formal relationship between these two.
But on the test, would we be able to still prove them parallel? Okay.
3x plus 2x is 5x. Subtract 20. 5x equals 160. Divide by 5, and x equals 32. And then we've got one more. Is there a relationship between these two angles on number 12? They're corresponding. What do corresponding angles have to be? Congruent. So 7x minus 11 would have to equal 4x plus 58. I always move the smaller x. Let me subtract. Add 11. 3x equals 69. Divide by 3 and x equals 23.